conversations, they're not going to get the resources, they're not going to get the interventions. And then as a result, what we're seeing is the increase. And so we're not making progress in that area. And so again, like to the women that I've worked with, I just want to acknowledge and commend them for using their voices, because getting from a place where they get out of their own internalized stigma to express themselves and to see that this is something bigger than them, and then to make it part of their mission to support newly diagnosed women or to promote the message of prevention for heterosexual women has been really important to bringing them to the table. So I think we are have been involved in a lot of different groups of making sure, such as the Alianza group in Los Angeles County, making sure we're bringing information and education on the latest in HIV prevention, the latest in HIV treatment, and the variety of treatment options to the Latinx community, so that they have information to make informed decisions. And then for women, Black and Latino women, making it known that, expressing how they never received information about HIV prevention and how that needs to be critical to our work, that it's not just about HIV treatment for cis and trans Black and Latino women, but we also have to integrate the prevention messages as well.
Thank you for that, Natalie. You're getting some agreement in the chat too about, seeing that we're not making the progress that we need to in the Latinx community, particularly among women of color. And it's an interesting thing not interesting, but it's actually gratifying that your work on the CPG and also the work of the Women's Committee of the CPG made it clear that women needed to be a priority of our integrated plan, because when we first put the plan out, we had it in such, because we looked at the data in a certain way, but we were instructed and we took that instruction to look at the data in a different way. And so we included people who can become pregnant and women as a priority. And it was particularly important because we looked at family level interventions. We looked at the particular place of women as caregivers within family units. And so all of that came out of the process of people being at the table and talking about not only what we're seeing in the data, but what the data means. So that was really important. And you gave examples of just exactly that, providing the interpretation that we need to make sense of data, particularly where we're working with smaller groups of people that may be having a lot of intersectional social determinants of health issues that make them at particular risk. So thank you for the work that you do. Jeff, this next question actually goes to you. You're speaking of so what would you think that some important future priorities of Pacha would be contextualized in the work and experience that you described as you introduced yourself?
Sure. So I was asked to originally, my first interaction with Pacha was asked to be a subject matter expert and testify at one of the meetings on HIV and aging issues. So the work I've done, and this is really a credit to Harold Phillips, who was the AIDS czar at the time, who kind of elevated this issue. And then later, as a result, I was asked to join Pacha. And so what we've tried to do is kind of elevate those issues. As we all know, the epidemic's graying. It's both a blessing and a curse, right? Where people are living into old age, which we never thought would happen. People of my generation were literally given a death sentence when they got their test results. And, fast forward 30, 40 years, here we are graying into old age and have very specific needs that are not being addressed by the current systems we have in place, especially medical care. We talk about stigma. There's a lot of aging stigma, both in society at large, where people are kind of shoved aside and not paid much attention to as they get older. It's especially rampant in the LGBTQ community, where people feel entirely invisible and devalued. And then even in the medical setting, where it shouldn't be happening, people present with aging comorbidities. Anything other than HIV is often poo-pooed by their clinicians and say, "Oh, you're just getting older. Oh, you're forgetting things. That's fine. Oh, you've got aches and pains." And they really kind of minimize, what's happening to people. And, to their credit, most of the HIV providers are ID physicians. They are not geriatricians. They're not family practice or general practice. So they really focus on, their HIV. And, fortunately for most folks, that's very well controlled these days. There is a subset of people who have not benefited, who still have resistance, who still have trouble, tolerating the drugs, and they often get left behind as well. So I think it's really been an effort to kind of highlight the the shortcomings of our medical system and our care system writ large in terms of providing for this rapidly aging population that's going to be the vast majority of people. It'll be 70% by the end of the decade, and we're not prepared to address their needs. So, I served with Jesse Milan from AIDS United. He was the chair of our committee, and joined him as co-chair later on. And so we really tried to formulate some recommendations for the secretary in terms of ensuring that age-appropriate care was provided in the context of the federally funded HIV services like Ryan White, Medicare, Medicaid, and making sure that people got, for example, the screenings that they need for age-related comorbidities and cancers and things like that, bone mineral density. A lot of people have bone loss, things like that. And ensuring that it didn't just happen at 65. One of the unique things about aging with HIV is that it's an accelerated aging process and also accentuated. So people are getting age-related comorbidities earlier, and they tend to be worse in people living with HIV. So it's really important. We identify aging in HIV as starting at around age 50, not 65. It's about 15 years sooner for most folks, and ensuring that they are offered these services both medically and in terms of housing and things like that as well. There's a lot of services out there for seniors, the people with HIV who are on disability, who are disabled by their HIV and increasingly by their aging comorbidities, need these services, and they're not able to access them. So we really need to kind of carve out a place for people aging with HIV to receive these services when they need them and not have to wait until they're 65, which may be way too late. So there's a lot that needs to happen there. It's really frustrating that Pacha was cut short. This isn't the first time this has happened, as we know, and it was interesting to serve with people on Pacha who had been around the first time when Trump disbanded Pacha, and so that was really interesting to hear, what happened to them and what that was like. And they've been, Pacha continues to meet, as Ronnie and Natalie said, most recently at USCHA in DC. I was ill and couldn't join them, but we're continuing to try to do the work and have a voice and say we're here. This is an issue that's not going away. We were kind of selected as experts to address these issues, and we're going to continue doing that to make the work go forward. So that's what we've been trying to do.
Amazing. Thank you, Jeff. And one of the things that, you talk about this capacity to sort of understand the HIV and aging process. It is, bringing on the technology and kind of thinking about like the all the things that need to be in place to age healthy and to thrive, right? There has to be a medical component, a mental health component, sort of an emergency services component, and people's need to be assessed at many different times over the life course. And I think that your organization has been a big part of it, of building the capacity of, particularly at the planning councils that we see meeting across California, that you show up, you talk about that. And I think this is just for our audience, viewing audience, we have 8 EMA eligible metropolitan areas and transitional grant areas that receive Part A HRSA Ryan White dollars. And these collectively, these group of community members, that these are mandated bodies, they meet together, and their work is distributes and is responsible for allocating over $1.1 billion for HIV services across California. It is a lot of money that they're responsible for. And they, among other things, at those planning council tables, people are talking about HIV and aging populations and what makes for the next best steps to actually building the system to address this growing precipice of which is a wonderful thing to be involved in, meaning having an aging population where our mortality rate is everything else but HIV for people living with HIV. It's other chronic conditions. So thank you for your work, Jeff. We have a couple questions in the chat, so I want to get to a few of those, and we have kind of one capstone question at the end that we'd like you all to address. One question is related to the forces that might be helpful and supportive of Pacha and its work. So are there places or groups that are particularly supportive? You mentioned NMAC, the national conference. Are there other places that have supported and helped to translate and transmit what you've been doing at the federal level across the? Where can participants that have the ability to support you through their representatives, et cetera, go? Are there representatives that are more supportive of Pacha? That's a long question, but what are the forces that are supporting Pacha at this point? And is there any way that our attendees can help?
Well, I think, you mentioned the political representatives, and, I mentioned Jesse Milan and AIDS United, and that's a great program where they do AIDS Watch on the Hill every year. And I think I can't remember the name of the program in California that does the same, but finding our allies when they're out there. And historically, the Ryan White programs and other HIV funding have enjoyed bipartisan support over the decades. And, identifying those people and telling them this is still important, reminding the Republicans that ending the HIV epidemic initiative was Donald Trump's initiative. It's kind of shocking that they've thrown that away, all part of Project 2025, so that, we have longstanding allies. So first and foremost, go to them and tell the stories. And that's anybody who's ever done any kind of work on the Hill with legislators. It's the thing we're told is don't throw numbers and statistics at them. Tell them personal stories about how this affects their constituents. And, there are lots of them. We all represent those folks. And that's a great place to start.
Thank you, Jeff, for that. We have another question that actually I'd like to pose to Rania, because you had a lot of you've described the process of becoming involved with and adding your voice. But we have somebody in our Q&A that says sometimes it feels really impossible to do your part in ending the syndemic when you're on the local level, and in a small community. What do you think the key roles that a local epidemiologist can play or other public health professional at the local level can play at ending the HIV/STI epidemics and addressing social determinants of health? So particularly with your consultancy and how you've provided that to both public health departments as well as community-based organizations, is there anything that you can distill as the best words of advice for this participant?
Yeah, my recommendation is to be loud, is to be bold, and to don't give up. I think that any space that you're in, there's a space for you to push, especially if you think it's about, how do you make sure information is getting to folks? How do you make sure the stories of people who are most impacted by issues come up? And so to me, that is whether you're on a local stage or a national stage, that there's space and opportunity for that. Now, the people may be irritated by you, and they may you may come in the room and they're like, oh, there this person goes. They're gonna have so much to say. But I think that is how advocacy works. And for me, at least in my experience, that is how change works, right? You find that all of a sudden there's other people in the room who are speaking up as well and have thoughts and ideas that they thought they couldn't do anything about, but now they're coming up. And then there's more people who are like, you know what, this person needs to be in that room because they are always speaking up and giving us new ideas and they're being innovative. And so to me, it's that. And it's not like you can do it one time and then it breaks through. It has to be a commitment to like persistency and showing up, showing out in every space. And I can't be, saying things just to say things. And I know that you aren't saying that, but I think that it has to be, like, what is the tangible ways that we're making impact? And so I think it always has to also be very solutions oriented. That we have to be the folks who can fix it. And so I think that as a local epidemiologist, and I think I can probably say this for most people's roles, there's ways that you can create change. Like you are like the source of information and data for folks. And so whether it's like, how do you develop infographics that could also be useful for community and clients or consumers? And how do you make sure that's information that we're collecting and shared back with them? There's all kinds of different ways that I think that you can be creative and thoughtful around like, how do I show up? And I feel like, you want to be branded as that. You want to be branded as the person who's always showing up and talking and has things to say that are really tangible and solutions oriented. For me, that's honestly like how I feel like for me, it's like seeing like a longtime HIV advocate, somebody who, acquired HIV before there was even an HIV test to diagnose it. And for me, seeing that history, seeing and hearing the stories of what advocacy looked like is kind of like what sparked my own advocacy and like, oh, this is who I want to be. This is who I can be. And it shows up honestly, like in every part of my life now. Like you should see me at my kids' school. I'm like, I have something to say and we want to change this together.
Amazing.
That's that spirit of HIV activism and advocacy, nothing for us without us, that I think, makes our field and our movement so different. And so I would say lean into that. And I promise you that in every space, there's a voice for you in that way.
Amazing. Thank you so much. And so hopefully that was helpful to the person that posed that question. I know I got a lot out of that as well. Here's a question that was posed for Natalie in the chat. Are there barriers that you've learned specifically are there barriers that you've specifically learned and faced by women and learned about by women in marginalized communities to which we could be better around capturing data for? So is there better ways that we can, and actually this has been posed in a couple different tables too, are we collecting the right information, asking the right questions, having people interpret the data in the right ways? But so once again, to restate that question, are there things about that are being faced by women in marginalized communities to which we could be better around capturing the data for?
Yeah, I think sometimes we don't do populations. We kind of lump everybody together. And so for us in the Women's Committee, I'm going to give a shout out to CPG Women's Committee. We work closely with Yesenia and with Amy and with the epidemiology department to say, we don't have this data, but we know that you collect data on women. Can you further dissect that information? And then how can we present that in an infographic? How can we present this information so it's easily digestible for people who may not have a public health background, who may not have a higher education background? So sometimes it's a matter of just asking for the data and, to further break down the data you already have.
Right.
And there's also a collection of data. So some things I was able to do with our team is, through like the work that we were doing, we wanted to collect evidence that, the podcast was effective and having an impact in women and in the communities that we were serving. And so part of that was the evaluation piece. And so dedicating time and staff and resources to collect the data that you may not have and that might be beneficial to you. So shout out to Sitlalin as well for her collection of data in the LaFan program to capture some really good qualitative data from providers as well as from women with lived experience about, being impacted by storytelling.
Amazing, thank you. Also kind of a plug for planning council tables that actually have to, like our Part A planning council tables do an annual needs assessment every year that involves a lot of collection of qualitative data from consumers at the local level. And all of that is an amazing resource. Actually, it's one of the things that we're going to be leaning into this year by creating a statewide coordinated statement of need that leans into the needs assessments of all of our Part 8 planning councils as part of our integrated planning process this year. All of this information too, just kind of a plug, is going to be part of the information that goes into our integrated planning process. So we were very grateful to you doubly because of that. So thanks for your great input. I'm going to read a question now for Jeff, and this is actually provocative, a little bit provocative. So from Fred Maypark, Jeff, why does it seem that infectious disease specialists and geriatrics work against each other? And if you need more context about that, we can ask Fred to come off of mute.
Yeah, no, I think I know where he's coming from. And I don't know so much that they work against each other, is that they're siloed. Historically, infectious disease specialists would, diagnose and treat an infectious disease and cure it or not. And HIV was unique in that it was something that they couldn't cure, and that people have been living decades now with HIV. And as they've gotten older, the geriatric specialty is designed for quote unquote normal aging. The things that people normally get as they get older, and anybody who's cared for an older parent or relative, knows what that's like. And they have all these different specialists, all these different medications they're on, and people don't talk to each other. They're all siloed. And that's the problem. And that's where geriatrics comes in. And you have a geriatrician who kind of coordinates all the care they're getting and kind of takes that over. So they're not working because it does, you're right, they can't seem to be working against each other. You know, the cardiologist will do one thing and the infectious disease doctor another. So I think it's finding a model, and a really good example of that was pioneered at UCSF within their Golden Compass Clinic that Meredith Green started a number of years ago, where it really is an integrated model of care where you have everybody there, the doctors, the HIV doctors, the other specialists, as well as the social support that they need. You know, and a lot of our HIV agencies have done that very well over the years, and if they can provide both clinical care as well as social services, that's the ideal model. It doesn't exist everywhere, and I think you know, some of the forces that came along with Obamacare, turning the specialty clinics into you know, general care clinics has I think worked against us in some ways. It's provided very useful funding, but it's made it more of a challenge to really focus on HIV. There's a lot of challenges there, but I think there aren't enough geriatricians in the world to treat all the people with HIV, let alone the general population, right? So I think we need to incorporate a geriatric model of care with guidelines, and that's what we were trying to do with our recommendations to the secretary, to say, here's a list of things that you should focus on. These should be, you know, earmarks that Medicare, and Medicaid and others provide for patients, and that they get ranked on in terms of how they get evaluated in terms of providing care.
Great, thank you, Jeff. I'm just going to read this question out loud. We don't necessarily. I'm going to say that we have a special session on harm reduction. It's a plenary on day 3, but someone just noted that and are asking for a key to the League of Cities and the State Police Chiefs Association, as well as the Deputy Sheriff's Association, that have operated coordinated attacks on all harm reduction and safe drug use and safe sex programs. So I'm just going to also name the value. One of the values that of our integrated plan is number 1, that we value drug user health, so that it's many of the actually probably about 70% of our activities that are implementation blueprint related to our integrated plan have a harm reduction focus to them. And once again, we're going to be addressing a harm reduction session on day 3, led by Pike Long, one of our harm reduction unit, specialists at the state level. So we'd love to have a rich harm reduction conversation, particularly as it overlaps with housing first strategy. So that's going to be on day 3. But if anybody has a link to a resource related to the question, which is the key to a League of Cities and State Police Association that have targeted harm reduction and safe drug using programs, we can post that in the chat. I'll also note that we are going to be developing a resource page, a resource wall from the information that we get and that people post. So just note the things that are going to be posted in the chat are also going to be made part of the resources that we make available to the conference. I'm just going to go. So we're coming, this has been a rich discussion, and we're going to be coming close to time. So I'm going to move to the one last question, and we're going to continue, and we invite people to continue to put questions in the chat, because our panelists are invited to stay and continue to answer questions in the Q&A module asynchronously. And of course, we'll get to those questions as we get to the end of the conference in general over the course of the next 3 days. But the last question, we wanted to be sure actually to program this question, but you've already done a little bit of this in all kinds of ways in your responses already, which was to end in some hope and some advice to individuals. So this question is, and this is for all of you, can you share some words of advice or hope to help move through these difficult times for our HIV, STI, hepatitis C impacted communities, our advocates, our workforce, that are watching the panel today, that in many ways feel like their work is under fire? So please, anybody can go first.
I'll go first. I just want to say, don't give up hope. I think the systems that we've developed, through Ryan White, through Medicaid expansion here in California, those systems work. We see that the health outcomes for those that are on Ryan White program, those that are living with HIV, access to healthcare through Medicaid expansion results in better health outcomes. And being part of PACHA, I didn't realize how privileged I was, or the people in Los Angeles County or in California were, to have these resources. So when I was, at meetings in states that did not have Medicaid expansion, who did not have the resources, who were on wait lists for ADAP, that was not the case in California. So I just really want to remind people that the past 30 years, the systems that have been developed for people living with HIV and our prevention efforts are effective. So don't lose sight of the progress that we have made, and don't walk away. Keep that mission that we had in trying to care for people living with HIV.
Thank you so much, Natalie. That's amazing. Please.
Yeah, I would say we know how to do this. Like, this is a community that's fought before, that's been through horribly hard times, and has, come out on the other side with really durable systems, like Natalie just talked about, with a huge workforce that is ready and able to pivot and innovate. And I'd say that sometimes from the darkest times, like, innovation is sparked, and hope is sparked. And I feel like that is the time that we are at. We are, I feel like, so close to ending HIV, but it feels so far away. It feels so much closer than I've ever experienced in kind of like our lifetime of doing this work. And yet it feels like we have to do things a lot differently now. And how can we build something? How do we build systems that can steady any storm, I think is really important. And so for me, I'm really inspired by some of the innovation that I see happening in places, right? Like how organizations are completely changing their financial model so that, they don't have to rely on unstable funding sources. I see organizations that are figuring out how to partner with other institutions. I see organizations that are thinking about, like, how do they take care of the whole person in a different kind of way. And yeah, I would say that this is a time for that. And I would also tell folks, like, take care of yourselves. It is a really hard time now for people who I think have values that are related to so much of the, like, work that we do. And it can be really challenging. I know that, like, families, our lives, our personal lives are greatly impacted. And I think pouring into yourselves, pouring into ourselves, I'm saying it for myself too, is really important. And I think what is going to be a long time of effort, but you don't win if you don't fight. And we have to keep on pushing for what we believe in, what we know works. And you got to be whole to be able to do that. So take care of yourselves so we can take care of our communities.
Yes, thank you. It's amazing. I feel the hope like rising even as they're all speaking. So I need this. I need this like water in the desert. Jeff.
Well, coming from the desert, provide you some water. But yeah, as both Natalie and Ronnie said, we've been here before, and not everybody lived through it themselves. But go back and look at what it was like in the early days, and it was really bleak. Nobody was listening. We were literally voices in the desert, right? And that it took a decade before we started seeing some successes and getting the research and then the funding for the support services that we're lucky to have. And so we're in the enviable position of protecting what's already there instead of having to build it from scratch and convince people that it needs to be built and it needs to be funded. So I think that's, I think, a little bit of hope to know that it's not as bad as it has been. We've been there before. And, this is an amazing, resilient community. And we've learned over the years how to come together with all aspects of the community and really band together and make things happen. And then Rania touched on, the psychosocial impact. The PTSD is just through the roof. And especially for my community who were there before, COVID did it, Mpox did it. It's just like, why does this keep happening? Why have we not learned from our mistakes? And now that we've, come so close to ending the epidemic and really close. I work, one other hat I wear is cure research, and we're really close to that. And it's really fortunate in the last, even the last week or so, there've been some court decisions that are protecting the research funding, and most of that is still there. We're having to fight for it, but the research is still happening, and there's hope, not just for the end of the epidemic, but hopefully the end of the disease itself. So I think that's something to kind of hold on to as we navigate these dark times.
Thank you so much, Jeff. Once again, the hope rising. Dr. Ramos, we'd also like you to address this question if you want to just, any thoughts? I know that your presentation actually did have some elements of hope and talking about successes, but are anything that you wanted to add related to advice to individuals that are, just going through some difficult times doing the work that they're doing?
Okay, so I'll end it with this, but I'm going to end it in a really positive note in just a minute. I just want to echo what all three of you have said. It's amazing. I have to say I am proud to lead this state in the fight against HIV and our syndemic work. It is without all of you out there, this can't be done. But like I've said before, we are lucky to be in California, and we're lucky to have our governor's support, our leadership at agency, at CDPH, in helping to stay the course, to not change where we're going. And so I think with the help of everyone here in California, in this community, we could do it, and we will weather this storm and come out. We will come out of it, and we'll be stronger, and we will stay in the right direction to end that HIV, STI, HCV in the state of California. And I'm going to, with that note, could I jump in, Leroy? Could I take over now? Because I am so excited about the next part.
You can. So let's actually show our slide deck again. Thank you so much for this panel. This, part of like this work has been about getting this information to the right people in the right way, and the right information that you've been sharing. So this has been very helpful. So we're going to go to the next slide and announce the Ending the Syndemic Symposium Award. So over to you, Marissa. Dr. Marissa Ramos, the Chief of the Office of AIDS, is going to be conferring this year's Ending the Syndemic Symposium Award.
Okay. So it is now my great honor to confer the 2025 Ending Syndemic Symposium Award. This award is granted each year to an individual or organization whose work has helped further our progress in ending the syndemic in California. We know, of course, that it's a big, long list, and so we had to pick someone or some folks. So this year, the planning committee of this symposium gives the Ending the Syndemic Symposium Award to the California representatives on the PACHA. So thank you. Yay.
Yay. So next slide, please.
Next slide. All right. So because of your years of service working to center the interests of those most impacted by HIV, HCV, STIs in California, for your commitment to the human dignity of all people who seek medical and public health services, for your courageous and visionary leadership by example, of taking the risk needed to change historical patterns and in this syndemic, and finally, for your ongoing collaboration and consultation to the California Department of Public Health Office of AIDS to help ensure that our work reflects and addresses whole people and the systems with which they interact. Natalie, Rania, Jeff, and Dr. Moore, who's not here today, please accept the 2025 Ending the Syndemic Symposium Award in recognition of all you have done to end the HIV, HCV, STI syndemic in California. Thank you so much.
Wonderful.
Yay.
Okay, so we wanted to turn, thank you, Marissa, for conferring that award. And we're, of course, going to turn it over to our three recipients that are present, just to provide any words or thoughts at the recipient of this. We'll say that this is the image that is on a plaque as well. So but we wanted to show you what you're going to be receiving. So any one of you can say a few words.
Yeah, thank you guys. That's so sweet. I feel like we all do this work together. And so to be acknowledged for the work that I think we're all so committed to and passionate for, especially from the state, from this planning group, from all the folks on this call means a whole lot. So thank you. It's been an interesting road this past year. And so I think the acknowledgement, the support, the community means more now than ever. So thank you guys so much. It's very sweet, very humbled.
Great.
Yeah, I'll just add that, as I mentioned, this has happened before, and we're looking forward to, once this nightmare is over, to kind of reconvening and continuing the work that we started. And but in the meantime, it's really wonderful to have, places like this to share the work and have opportunities to continue the work in spite of not being officially constituted. And looking forward to the day that we can have a bigger impact than we do now. Thanks.
Thank you, Jeff. Natalie?
And I want to say thank you. I mean, it's been an honor to be of service, but I really want to thank the community, the friends, the people that have been part of one of the many projects or community-led initiatives that I've been part of, because it's really the being in community that energizes me and gives me commitment. So to all of, all of the friends that are here on this webinar, on this symposium, but also to the friends out there who are in the fight. We're in this fight together.
Awesome. Thank you so much. So we're at the end of this session, and we once again want to thank and provide some flowers to our Pacha panel recipients, Pacha panel members from California, and the important work that they do. We've mapped a lot of questions and a lot of territory, and the session will be available both in Spanish and English. We also have sort of a question in the chat that I'll just kind of call out. Calling out for sort of more voice from senior leadership across the state to sort of talk about what is happening in the change of our funding and policy environment. And so that is the purpose of our Syndemic Symposium. We're going to be discussing that very thing in a variety of ways. And one of the things that we're going to be having as a closing plenary is a discussion from Dr. Erica Pan about CDPH's sort of role in ending the syndemic as well. And so we'll invite some additional feedback and comments and sort of suggestions. The reason that we created the format of addressing HIV as a syndemic with STIs and hepatitis C, it was formed was because of community input. So, but Rania, I saw you take yourself off mute. You wanted to, did you want to address that? Okay, that question I got. So the ongoing ways that you provide input to help us make it better. We're certainly not perfect as public health professionals, as providers. We're sort of moving forward in ways and fits and starts, and the process of this work that we're doing at this symposium is going to help us continue the work no matter what the circumstances. So we want to thank you all for participating and listening to this session. We are coming up to a break. So we're going to announce the break just a touch early and announce that our next session so our break is going to be from now until 1:45, and we'll have a timer that comes up. When you come back, we're going to hear from representatives and members of the Confessions podcast, and we'll see Natalie and some other producers and some community advocates talk about the work that they've done to address stigma through personal narrative and how we can participate and help amplify their voices. So once again, thank you all for participating, Rania, Natalie, and Jeff. We hope to see you again and again and again, and of course we will. But thank you so much for the work that you do and for being part of this panel today.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, everybody. So come back at 1:45.
chance?
Great. Welcome back from break. We're hope that you had a chance to have a little bit of a bio break and relax and have some lunch. A couple of things as we announce this session. I'm going to, before we announce this next session, I wanted to remind you all of our translation services that we have available through this website. So down below on your Zoom screen, you'll find a little globe. And if you click on that globe, you'll get an option to choose your language preference. And for this particular presentation, we're going to have one of the speakers be presenting in Spanish. So if you are a preferred English speaker, this would be a good time for you to go and choose your preferred language and select the English option. Also, we have the ability for you all to actually raise your hand and speak your questions out. And we invite you to speak your questions in either Spanish or English for all sessions throughout the symposium. Now it is my great pleasure to introduce Angelique Skinner, who is going to be supporting this next session. Angelique Skinner is the Health Promotion Specialist 2 at the California Department of Public Health Office of AIDS. She serves as the Division Policy and Health Compliance and Fiscal Specialist with the Office of AIDS. She's responsible for developing scopes of work, budgets, and managing contracts for the Ending the Epidemics EHE project, and is one of the architects of this symposium. Angie, thank you so much for all the work that you do, and over to you.
Thank you very much for that lovely introduction, Leroy, and welcome back, everyone. Just want to say that Pacha presentation and panel was amazing. I just think that they did such a wonderful and uplifting job, and I want to thank them for that time. And let's show them some more love in the chat for what they did and for winning their Ending the Symposium award this time. So I'm so excited to present this next panel. I have been really looking forward to this session. Natalie mentioned in her Pacha plenary that she enjoys working with and has focused most of her work on women living with HIV. And this session, Confessions, a docu-series, podcast, and collective of women's stories, is very close to her heart and is basically her love letter to these women. So I'll turn it over to Natalie to let her introduce her amazing panel, and give you the opportunity to hear their voices.
Thank
Natalie?
you so much, Angie.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm really excited. Really, you don't have to hear from me too much longer. Really, I think the work in Confessions was about helping women to develop their voices, share their stories. And as a result, we've been able to record over 40 stories, and that's 40 individuals who have shared their experience of living with HIV in our most recent season of being those who are utilizing PrEP services. So it's been definitely a passion project of ours. And I want to introduce the rest of my team who is here. And so we have Citlali Lopez Torres, who is our data and evaluation at LaFan and is one of our producers, our junior producers for the podcast. And then next we have Marilyn Ramos, who's a podcast guest of season 1 and 4, but who was also working with me at LaFan as a peer navigator. And so I like to say once they were part of my team, they're always going to be part of my team, and that these women are leaders in their own right as well. So, joining us as well, we have our panelists. We have Vanessa, and we also have Gabby, who will be joining us for the session to share about their experience of being on the podcast. So next slide, please. So we have 9 seasons. We started off with season 1 and season 2. Season 1 started in October of 2023. And we've had the great fortune of having people who are interested in continuing to develop and share stories of living with HIV. So we've been able to tell the stories of Latina women, Spanish-speaking women, Black women living with HIV, women who have experienced substance use, as well as those who experience homelessness, those who have had children. And that's kind of been our experience in season 1 through season 4. And then we've been able to expand in our next season. So I'm going to invite Sitlali to share. She joined us for season 5, and I really want to just kind of give her the spotlight to take us through the journey of the Confessions podcast since she's joined. So next slide.
Thank you, so like Natalie said, my name is Sitlali. Hi, everyone. I'm the data and quality analyst for LaFan. I joined LaFan a little over a year ago, and what a year it's been, because so many of these seasons have come out. So like Natalie said, I jumped on around season 5, which was a really great experience to just see and learn how the podcast, how much work goes into the podcast and finding women and recording their episodes and publishing them. And then I do a little bit of the social media and marketing. So then, making sure people are aware of them after they've been recorded. So that's what I've been working on throughout this last year. So I think you left off on season 5, if I'm not mistaken. And I think I must have cut it off, but season 5 was where I joined, and then season 6 was our trans season that highlighted the experiences of trans women. And that's the season that Gabby was on, and she'll be speaking a little bit about her episode. Season 7 was focused on Latino women. And season 8 was the PrEP edition. So it was people who are HIV negative, but who are taking PrEP. And I love this season because it was a response to the cuts in funding of a lot of prevention and PrEP resources in Los Angeles County. So just making sure that that's a resource that people can access way after the funding cuts, and hopefully when they come back eventually. Season 9 was the season about family members affected with HIV, and this one is the season that Vanessa's on. She'll be talking about her experiences and what that's like, not just for the person living with HIV, but also their family members impacted by it. And then season 10, I know this one is in the works, Natalie, so I'll hand it back to you if you want to talk a little bit about the Asian American perspective for the future of Confessions.
Yeah, we're always trying to see what community needs to be uplifted. And so we've, through partnership, I've also had the pleasure of visiting AIDS service organizations in Hawaii. Also have been in conversations with the APAAT organization here in Los Angeles. So that's one area we want to cover, but we have so many other ideas for additional seasons. And I think really we just want to leave you with a cliffhanger to let you know that we plan to continue the podcast.
Okay, so I'll go ahead and move on, and I'll hand it over to Marilyn. So Marilyn did a couple of episodes. Do you want to start talking about this first, or should I play a little snippet of your episode? And I'm hoping this works.
I guess we can play it first.
Okay. So this is a snippet from Marilyn's episode for The Love of My 5 Children, and this was from season 4, which focused on pregnancy, substance use, recovery, and housing. And I'm really hoping this works. So fingers crossed. Let me go ahead and play it, and let me know if you can hear this. Is it working?
If not, we've got you covered and we can play it on our end.
So no audio is coming through. I think if you reshare your screen and to include audio, it'll come through.
1 second. Share sound. Oh, I see.
There's 2 buttons to push.
Thank you. Put it over.
On for support. When somebody asks, so who was your support system for when you were diagnosed? And I say, Crystal. And they say, oh, is that somebody named Crystal? And I say, no, it's crystal meth, the drug. That's what I, leaned on for support. So I used during my first months of pregnancy, unfortunately, because I, lacked coping skills and just tools, other things to manage, the trauma from the diagnosis and my dad's passing, that I actually, was still out in the street and doing things I wasn't supposed to. So about 6 months pregnant, I was incarcerated. And it really was the best thing that could have happened to me while being pregnant, because it allowed me to be sober and take my medication the way I was supposed to.
So there we go. That was just a short snippet of this episode. And I'll hand it over to Marilyn.
Hi, everyone. Can you guys hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay. Thank you so much, Citlali. Yes, this is just a little piece of my story. For a lot of you guys that maybe don't know, I do have a first episode in season 1, episode 6. And it talks a little bit more about, my diagnosis and where I was at when I got diagnosed. And so I had just lost my father a few days before the diagnosis, and I was 6 weeks pregnant. And so the way I found out was over the phone. And so it was very traumatic situation. But, fast forward, I just really want to thank folks like Natalie that give us a voice, like this Confessions podcast, because I've only really been shared my diagnosis for about 2 years now, since I was invited to the podcast Confessions. And it's been just kind of so many doors have opened for me and my family. And it's just been an incredible journey to work with such wonderful people. And never in a million years would I've thought that I would be publicly speaking about my diagnosis, or even, referencing anything that had to do with HIV. There had been programs that I was invited to and things like that. And I just never went. So, I think a lot of the community folks that work in HIV services, you guys insist and don't give up on us. And so that's kind of what my call to action is here, is don't give up on us, because sooner or later we're going to come around. And sometimes we're just not in the right set of mind, or just it's not the time for us. And 17 years later, I share my story on this Confessions podcast, and it's just been overwhelming in joy. More than anything, I was able to disclose to my daughter, my oldest daughter, the one I was pregnant with, when the podcast launched. Before she heard it from the podcast, I told her myself. And that, I think that was the biggest door it opened for me, was able to tell my children about my diagnosis. And so after that, just things kept coming. And I really, because of this podcast, just found the true calling of my life, like that passion I have every day when I wake up, is just trying to make a difference with one woman at a time. And I've done homeless services and substance use, domestic violence for about 10 years now as a case manager. But once I stepped into like the HIV field, and even though I do have like lived experience in all the other areas I've worked in, it's just like it's a different fight. It's just this fire that comes on when I see, women that look like me, that I can give them a hand so they don't go through what I went through. And so being that ray of light, that ray of hope for someone, it's just incredible. I was recently invited to USCHA to be an ambassador with Gilead for the Choose You campaign. And just, I was a speaker there at the African American Museum. So it's just things that I've never ever thought I would do. And to have women of every ethnicity, of every walk of life, come up to me and say, hey, thank you for being a voice. I've thank you for telling my story, because some, we have similarities in our stories, and some, we all have a different story, but we all have some similarities. We've gone through some of the same struggles. And so some women say, thank you for telling my story. Others say, thank you for being a voice for Latinas, or just, it's just overwhelming with love. And so I really thank Natalie and Elia, who's not on the call, she's the social worker that works at our clinic. And just for her not giving up on me, even though I would block her and, you know, do things like that, where she would invite me to stuff and I'd be like, yeah, I'm going to go, and just never show up. She just never gave up on me. And so as service providers, I really encourage you to don't give up on us. You know, we want the help. It's just hard for us to receive it. Sometimes we just feel so broken and unworthy that we feel like we're not part of anything. And so just continue to reach out to us. We will eventually come around.
And something really beautiful that I wanted to share is Marilyn and I recently, this past weekend, we attended a women's retreat with Christie's Place down in San Diego. And we actually had a listening session of Marilyn's first episode where she's talking about her first pregnancy, and her daughter was there also listening to the episode. So I thought it was a very beautiful moment. We also had some canvases and paint so that we could all paint a little of what we were feeling. So yeah, it was really nice to see, you know, you telling your story, Marilyn, and being open and having your daughter there listening as well. So thank you for sharing. And I'll go ahead and move over to,
You know, the trauma from the diagnosis, and when somebody asks, so who was?
Sorry, maybe I need to do this. So another episode we wanted to highlight is Vanessa's, and she's here on the call as well. So let me play a little bit of her snippet from season 9, and then I'll pass it over to you afterwards, Vanessa.
It was basically get the chemo, see what happens. Then they gave me the first 2 chemotherapies. They weren't working as they wanted to for it to work. I was really scared because I told myself, I'm not gonna die of HIV, I'm gonna die of cancer.
So that's just a really small snippet of a beautiful story. And I'd love to hear more from Vanessa.
Nope.
No, we can't hear you.
You might be double muted if you're on your phone. Is it *6 or #6 maybe?
Should be good now. I see it as unmuted.
No, I can't hear you.
She's not muted, but it's not working on her end. Somehow there's a kind of a double mute.
My God.
There we go. I heard her talking.
That's not here. It's me, Gabby.
I was gonna say that was Gabby.
Oh,
Hi, Gabby.
sorry.
Yeah, let's move to the Gabby story, and then we could come back to Vanessa's.
Okay, that works. So we'll come back to
It was
this.
basically get the chemo, see
Sorry,
what happens.
one second. Gotta go down here. So this is a little bit of Gabby's story. She is from season 6. Honduran, diagnosed in 2021, and we have all of these episodes are also on YouTube as well. So actually what I'm going to do is I'm going to switch gears to the YouTube page, and I can play it from there. Her episode is it's a little longer. It's about 30 minutes long, but there's a part of it in like halfway through that I wanted to emphasize. So let me go there now. Let me make sure I put the sound on. Right. And for everyone listening in English, this is in Spanish.
Hubieron muchos factores que me llevaron a mí a tener el VIH. En la cárcel, los oficiales, la primera vez que me metieron con los hombres, yo tuve relaciones sexuales, pues ahí no habían preservativos ni nada de eso, ¿verdad? Y gracias a Dios cuando salí, no salí con ninguna STD. Sentía que Estados Unidos era muy libre. Empecé a disfrutar esa libertad y tomó su tiempo para que yo aprendiera más sobre el VIH y la prevención. Yo en el 2018 y 3 años, la mayoría del tiempo estuve teniendo relaciones sin preservativo porque pues yo llegué virgen a ese país. Creía de que con las personas que yo me metía, solo con verlas que estaban bien, decían, no se ve que esté enfermo, pero muchas veces dicen que la manzana más bonita por fuera está la más podrida por dentro. Tardó un tiempo en que yo fuera diagnosticada con VIH. Sí, ese trabajo sexual lo hice antes de ser diagnosticada. Yo no lo llamaba un trabajo, pero hoy en día que sé que al intercambiar sexo por dinero, comida o algo es un trabajo sexual, yo decía que lo hacía por sobrevivir. Sí, lo hice como por unos 2 años. Cuando llegué a Estados Unidos, pues
Y Gaby, ¿nos puedes dar un poco más de contexto sobre esta parte de tu episodio y más sobre tu historia personal?
yeah, I wanna say in English, un saludo, how do you say saludo in English?
Hello.
Yeah, no. I want to say hello to everyone, and I prefer to speak Spanish because it's my natal language. But also someone is going to translate. Yo la verdad que no estaba preparada para lo que venía con ser una mujer trans, latina, inmigrante, porque yo desde pequeña pues he estado como acostumbrada al sufrimiento, a la discriminación, a los maltratos físicos y psicológicos de la vida. Pero siento que desde que yo fui diagnosticada con VIH el 6 de mayo del 2021, aparte de la discriminación que he sufrido desde que llegué a este país, también tenía que lidiar con el estigma. Y pues fue un poco difícil para mí porque pues yo estuve bajo la adicción de drogas y alcohol, bajo el trabajo sexual, y no lo llamaba así, y estuve también sometida bajo las instituciones gubernamentales, o sea, los centros de detenciones de migración, y son muchos factores, ¿verdad?, que me llevaron a mí a tomar esas decisiones de refugiarme en el alcohol, en las drogas, en el sexo, en, en esas compañías, ¿verdad?, que no eran tan gratas ni buenas, pero en su momento, pues algo de algo servía, ¿verdad? Para mí, desde que yo estaba pequeña, yo siempre he dicho, ¿verdad? Si no hay sufrimiento, no hay crecimiento, pero habemos personas que sí sufrimos mucho, ¿verdad? Sí sufrimos mucho. Y yo, la verdad, aunque yo estudié y llegué hasta cierto grado universitario, no sabía mucha información sobre el VIH. Era un tabú en mi pueblo porque las personas decían que si tenías VIH se lo podías transmitir a otros hasta por la saliva y cosas así. Yo escuchaba que no más que con tocarlo, que no sé qué. Pero la verdad que a medida pues se me fueron presentando ciertas circunstancias en mi vida, fui aprendiendo. Cuando yo fui diagnosticada de VIH, me intenté suicidar. Mis primeros pensamientos fueron de suicidio. Em, También esa vez me drogué, pero justo antes de suicidarme del puente que estaba en construcción en Whittier, o ya lo estaban terminando, hablé con mi madre y pues mi madre fue mi primer apoyo emocional y me dijo, si usted, mi madre me trata como hijo, pero that's okay, because es mi mamá, me dijo, si usted está bien, hijo, yo voy a estar bien, y si no, pues yo no voy a estar bien. Entonces yo decidí cambiar mi estilo de vida, ¿no? A algo más saludable, algo más diferente. Pero todo lo que yo compartí en el podcast, la verdad que a mí
como que me revivió muchas cosas, ¿no? Siempre digo, que nunca se te olviden las cosas que has pasado en el pasado, porque en el momento que a ti se te olviden, vas a olvidar por cuál es tu propósito en esta vida, y no, entonces yo pues, ya dijo mi compañera Citlali, pues soy una mujer hondureña latina de 28 años y también tengo 5 años de estar limpia y sobre 5 años voy a cumplir de estar sobria y limpia de alcohol y drogas. También ya voy sobre 5 años de estar indetectable, intransmitible, gracias a Dios. Y estoy activamente colaborando con mi comunidad LGBTQ+. Me estoy empoderando para ayudar a personas positivas, también para ayudar a prevenir la pandemia del HIV. Ah, Estoy en comunicación con muchas organizaciones como voluntaria y también con personas así como mi amiga Citlali, Nara, Lielia, que por medio de un podcast hacen concientización a la comunidad, no solo a la comunidad LGBT, sino en general a todas las comunidades, porque pues, es algo que yo no se podría decir que elegí, sino por mis acciones se podría decir que sí, pero es algo que se presentó en el camino y yo siempre he dicho, el haber sido diagnosticada con VIH o HIV ha sido la best thing in my life, ha sido la mejor cosa de mi vida, porque ahí fue donde empecé a cuidar mi salud física, mi salud mental, mi salud espiritual, y me entregué de cuerpo y alma a mi comunidad y yo realmente estoy muy agradecida, ¿verdad?, con todas las personas que me están escuchando en este meeting, con Natalie, con Citlali, con Elia y con todos esos líderes que empoderan nuestra comunidad y que quieren que nuestra comunidad vaya por un camino mejor no, y poder detener, esta pandemia del VIH con amor y entendimiento, ¿no? Y yo estoy muy agradecida por esto. Citlali, no sé si tú quisieras que algo más que yo hablara, me enfocara.
Está perfecto, lo que dijiste está perfecto. Yo digo porque nos dijiste cosas bonitas, ¿verdad?
Las quiero mucho, la verdad las quiero mucho y muchas gracias por ser parte de mi vida, de mi recuperación, de mi sobriedad, eh, de mi comunidad, por ser esas líderes tanto que nosotros necesitamos. La comunidad con VIH, la comunidad LGBT, la comunidad trans, latina, inmigrante, las comunidades negras, todas estas comunidades necesitamos organizaciones como ustedes, necesitamos líderes como ustedes y yo me siento muy feliz de ser parte de ello.
Thank you, Gaby. Gracias, Gaby. Y gracias por compartir un poco de su historia. La historia de Gaby también es una historia de una mujer inmigrante, así que es muy importante escuchar esas historias ahorita en estos tiempos. Quería también decirles que están todos los capítulos en YouTube cuando los quieran escuchar. And I did want to check in with Vanessa. Are you able to, can you try unmuting?
Yeah, can you guys hear me now?
Yes, we can.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'll
Perfect.
go back here. I can play it once more since it's a short snippet here, and then I'll hand it over to you afterwards.
It was basically get the chemo, see what happens. Then they gave me the first 2 chemotherapies. They weren't working as they wanted to for it to work. I was really scared because I told myself, I'm not gonna die of HIV, I'm gonna die of cancer.
Take it away, Vanessa.
Okay, perfect. Okay. Hi, everyone. My name is Vanessa. I'm 33 years old. I'm currently reside in Monterey Park, California. I was born in New York. My mother is Dominican and my father is from Cuba. So I've been living with HIV my whole life. Unfortunately, through my life, I also got diagnosed with cancer 3 times, unfortunately. which has made me a stronger person that I am now. And I'm just happy that I get the opportunity to share my story out there with everyone. And thank you, Natalie and Marilyn, Siklali, and Elia for letting me, do this and getting this opportunity, because I hope I can touch one person out there. Living with HIV, and it's a normal thing for me. I don't know what living without is. I'm grateful that nowadays we have great medications that don't have so much side effects. I'm currently taking the Cabenuva shot, which has been wonderful for me. And I'm, living and thriving. And thank you for having me.
Thank you, Vanessa. These are a couple of stories that we wanted to highlight here. We also had a couple more, but Natalie, did you want to mention anything before moving on?
No, if we could play Being Bridget, and then we can. Yeah, we just wanted to share additional snippets. Obviously, we can't have all 40 participants in our 45-minute presentation, but we wanted to give you a snippet of someone from the Palm Springs area who's also aging a little bit older. So let's hear from Bridget.
Disclosing my status to my brother, I hesitated to tell him, not because I was worried about whether or not he was going to be ashamed of me or what he was going to think of me. I hesitated to tell him because I knew some part of him was going to hurt for me and worry for me. And that is the feeling that you get when you tell family members, is especially if you're close and you have a relationship, you don't want them to worry about you. You don't want them to feel pain. You don't want them to treat you differently because they're worried about whether or not you're going to live or die, because there's still so much ignorance. And by ignorance, I mean the ignorance of not knowing. There's still so much ignorance that surrounds what HIV is and was, that people have a hard time understanding the concept.
Kind of cut off a little abruptly before her next thought, but Bridget is from season 2, which highlighted the experiences of Black women living with HIV. And in that snippet, she mentions a bit about how hard it is to tell family members. And, there's still a lot of stigma with surrounding HIV. People don't know a lot about it. People think it's a thing of the past. So she was talking a little bit about what that is like in her family. And
disclosing my status to
sorry,
my
when I click on
brother.
it plays, so I have to go down here. And so we also have a few other, tons of other perspectives. There's currently 52 episodes of the podcast, so 52 different experiences that you guys can listen to. And Madalena, she's one of the youngest participants of the Confessions podcast. She's on season 5, and season 5 I didn't mention before, but it's the season that highlights aging with HIV. So we have women like Madalena, who was diagnosed at 20 years old. And then we have women who've been living with HIV their whole lives, or who are now in their 50s and 60s and are living and aging with HIV. So she lives in Tampa currently in Florida, and she talks about how being a younger person, what that's like, living with HIV. And she's also really great on social media. She has an Instagram, a TikTok, and she talks a lot and educates a lot about HIV, and undetectable equals untransmissible. So you can find her at Young and Misunderstood. And those 2 U's in her username are intentional, for that U equals you. And Wanda is also one of our older participants. She's 61 years old, and she's been living with HIV since 1986. For the sake of time, we didn't include a snippet, but she has a really beautiful story as well. Currently living in Chula Vista, and she's been living, I think she's one of the women who've been living with HIV the longest. if I'm not mistaken, from the Confessions podcast. And I hope I'm not missing anything, but I'll move over to the next one. And we also have episodes in Spanish. So season 3 highlights the experiences of Hispanic women, and they tell their stories in Spanish. So Rosario, she is a woman from Peru. She currently lives in Oakland, and she talks about her experiences, learning about her diagnosis, her upbringing, her immigration story as well. So for everyone who speaks Spanish, I highly recommend this season. And I don't know if Natalie or Marilyn want to add anything before we get into the discussion, but there's a whole lot of episodes to choose from.
No, let's jump into discussion. Yeah.
Okay, sounds great. So we have a few discussion questions, and the first one here is, what are the most common misperceptions about women living with HIV that you still hear today? And I think they could be inputted into the chat for all the people participating. So I'll give everyone a second to input that, but common misperceptions.
Yeah, feel free to go ahead and put your answers in the chat.
So I'll read. Women aren't at risk. Commented by Erin. Anything else that you're hearing? They aren't offered PrEP.
Silence about women with HIV itself is a misperception.
Yeah, there's a lot of blaming so that they are, they deserve, there's misperceptions that they're deserving of it, that a behavior caused it. They don't seek treatment because they are angry. It's because they have multiple sex partners, or they're promiscuous. Again, all of these are misconceptions that, you know, again, as providers, if a woman's coming into your clinic or coming in for case management, these are misperceptions that maybe even our healthcare workers may have about the women that are coming in for services. I like that point, that, you know, a lot of blame on women for passing it to men. So that's a could be a misperception. Oh, okay. So clarification that women are not offered PrEP like men are offered PrEP. Yeah. So a common misperception is, you know, women know about prevention, but they don't know about prevention because there's no programs targeting women. Okay, our next question, Sitlali or Marilyn?
Hold on. Here. How has family support or lack of it influenced how women cope with their diagnosis? So responses can also be put in the chat. And I also be curious to hear if Vanessa, Marilyn, or Gabby have any responses to this question.
¿Me puedes traducir en español la pregunta?
Sí, claro. ¿Cómo el apoyo de la familia o no tener ese apoyo ha cambiado cómo las mujeres cope? How do you say cope? I'm blanking right now.
Marilyn, please translate to.
Cómo las mujeres viven con su diagnóstico.
Pues para mí el apoyo de mi familia ha sido muy importante, principalmente el apoyo de mi madre, el apoyo de mis hermanas. Ellas cerca de mi diagnóstico, pero también hay una persona muy importante que es mi esposo. Mi esposo, desde que yo lo conocí, yo le dije acerca de mi diagnóstico. Y hoy en día reconozco que la familia más cercana es mi esposo. Y mi esposo siempre está para mí, siempre está para apoyarme. Nos cuidamos mucho, él me cuida mucho porque yo me hice una cirugía de la manga gástrica porque estaba pasadita de peso y tenía muchos dolores, ¿verdad? Y siempre él me estaba diciendo, cuídese mucho porque pues usted tiene una condición de vida que es crónica, pero pues yo quiero que siempre esté conmigo, ¿verdad? Mi madre está en Honduras, mis hermanas viven en San Francisco, pero mi esposo es el que ha estado conmigo durante todo este proceso. Se podría decir que lo conocí justamente cuando tenía un año de ser diagnosticada de VIH. Y durante todos estos años mi esposo ha sido ese apoyo fundamental y emocional para mí como mujer trans, como mujer positiva de VIH y pues también el ambiente en el que vives o con las personas que te rodean pueden favorecer tu salud mental, tu salud física, y no, y eso tiene que ver con tu estado en el estado en que estás con el HIV y no si estás inyectable, intransmitible, si te estás cuidando, si estás tomando tu medicamento a tiempo. Entonces, para mí sí ha sido muy fundamental y no mantenerme en esas copias abajo de 10,000 y no como 20 copias en 10,000. Entonces, para mí sí ha sido muy fundamental el estar con mi esposo, ha sido muy bueno para mí. Y también tener el apoyo de mi familia, ese apoyo emocional que me dicen, no, sigue adelante, échale ganas, tú puedes. Y ya poco a poco las personas van saliendo de la ignorancia, van, van saliendo cada vez más de la ignorancia porque mi familia era de unas personas que carecían de mucha coherencia, ¿no? Pero por mí empezaron a entender más sobre el VIH y sobre las personas, incluso mi esposo, y pues eso ha sido mi familia, mi esposo, mis hermanas, mi mamá han sido parte fundamental.
Thank you, Gabby.
If I can just jump in, this is Marilyn. Also, I think that for me, the most difficult thing was to share with my children, with my daughter, the oldest one, and also it can take a toll on you taking care of yourself and taking care of your family. And so you are the person that kind of holds your household together, at least for myself. I'll speak for myself, and we often put ourselves at the end of the list because I have 5 children. I need to make sure that they're at doctor's appointments, that they have their dentist appointments. I have some that I've been dealing with special education and IEP meetings and here and this and like just the everyday things that come up. A cold, the flu, COVID, a dinner, all kinds of stuff that doesn't. And now I've added more layers to my busy schedule, like school and other stuff that I now put on my plate. But it's very hard, especially when you come from a place of trauma and family where you're taught to be a woman and you're just taught to be of service. And you gotta, make sure that everybody else is taken care of in your family. And even though you feel tired, you know something's not right. And you just like, no, I'll just go tomorrow. I can't miss work today. I have to make ends meet. So that's why, services for women are very important because these are the reasons that we aren't able to reach out or to participate or to take care of ourselves. Like it's the very basic human right is to be able to go to the doctor and not feel the guilt of I might not have enough money for the rent next month, or I don't have gas money, or it's very hard. And so we all are in different spaces and places in our life and our journey, but these are the reasons why I a lot of the times wasn't able to take care of myself, is because I need to take care of everybody else except for myself. And so Those are the things that need to change. Those are the things that we need to focus, that, you know, we are very much here. We are, you know, women that are still here living with HIV, that have lives, that have children, that want a career, that have a job. And so things need to be, I don't want to say targeted, but like made for women, like this podcast. And it goes to, you know, when I was working as a peer navigator for service providers, you know, it's really, really hard to hear a diagnosis. I mean, already from anybody, but hearing it from someone in a place of like leadership or power, like a doctor or a social worker, and just telling you, you know, you're positive, but you're going to be fine. You're going to live a long life. Don't worry about it. You got it. You know, just take your medication. It doesn't resonate with you. You know, you look at them thinking like, what the heck is this person talking about? Like, they don't know. Like, us, we feel like my life just ended. Like, I don't know what I'm going to do with myself, even though, you know, we know that now there's been so many advancements with medication and stuff. Like, we don't want to hear it. And so this podcast is a great tool for service providers that have newly diagnosed folks, you know, women in particular, but just anybody that feels alone or that they just don't want to engage in any kind of service at the moment. This is something that you can share with them. And I'm sure that more than one of these stories is going to resonate with someone. And so it's a life-saving tool. Someone that's just deep down on, you know, just wanting to crawl in their deathbed and just die, this can save someone's life. This podcast has been of service to so many women like myself. And I would not be here if it weren't for this podcast.
Thank you so much for sharing that and saying that, Marilyn. There's a question that kind of goes along with what you were just saying, but it's evident that participating in the podcasts can be transformative. If others want to implement a similar project, what do you recommend that they do first?
Is that question for me? I'm sorry.
It can be for you, but actually any of you on the panel can answer. Sorry.
Sure. I can just answer a bit, like a part of it. I think Natalie can answer the other part of it. For me, it's just really tapping into folks that are willing to share their lived experience. Like, listen to us. Like, we've been through so much. We've gone through a lot of the things, like substance use. A lot of us, you know, substance use, homelessness, trauma, DV, just a lot of things. Like, bring us to the table. You know, let us talk about our experience so we can better build a bridge from service providers to people receiving services. And so it's very crucial. A lot of the things we think we are like geniuses, or we're just like in our own, like a doctor, he obviously is a doctor and he knows his specialty. That's what he does. But you don't know the side of being positive. So bring us to the table. I think that makes a big difference, and just showing that we matter.
Yeah. Thank you, Marilyn. I would say, you know, if you have an idea or you want to replicate something like this, start small and do it. It's really about whether you're going to do a podcast, you're going to, you know, write stories, or you're going to do poetry. Don't overthink the project. I think a lot of people kind of talk themselves out of it. Start small. We started with a very little funding for season 1, and then we were able to get funding for season 2. But it was never about not having money. That was a barrier for us. It was about, we're going to do it and we're going to figure out how to do it. And I think, again, it is really about just identifying forums for people to start learning to tell their story. So even if it's a discussion group, if it's a support group, I think that was really helpful for us. Is we did start our podcast with participants who were part of the support group, who were already developing community, developing voices, learning how to talk up in group sessions. So those are some ways. And I think we have one more discussion question in our chat. So Citlali, if you want to take it.
Yes, we do. The last one here is one thing you are taking away at the end of this presentation, and please put that into the chat. One takeaway from this presentation.
And if any of you would like to come off mute to speak, you're welcome to do so. Just raise your hand and we can have that option for you as well.
So as people are putting that in the chat, Sitlali, if you want to go to the next slide.
Yeah.
And then we could come back to what people are going to take away.
So we have here the QR codes if anyone wants to pull out their phones and scan the screen here. Whether you listen on Spotify or Apple, you can find the Confessions podcast. I believe the YouTube link was dropped in the chat as well. So I'll give people a few seconds to scan these. But it's available wherever you get your podcasts. And very special thanks, first and foremost, to the men and women who've shared their stories on this podcast, everyone on this panel, the listeners and supporters of Confessions, and all the partnerships that Confessions has been able to develop with Christie's Place, Reach LA, tons of other community partners, and of course, our producers, Xavier Mejiga, Kavich Reynolds, and Francisco Valdez, who is our current producer.
So then we can go back to, if we want to go back to the chat. So some of the takeaways, people said that they're going to listen to the episode. And I think, again, if that can be the biggest takeaway, please listen. Also share. Again, you don't need our permission to share it. If you want to use it as part of a support group, as part of a staff meeting, as part of a multidisciplinary meeting, we encourage you to incorporate it into your agencies, share it in support groups, and just help us get it out there. What else do you guys see in the chat?
Stories about cis and trans women are very powerful, and I have to agree. So one of these stories can really help somebody else out, and that's from what we hear from the participants. That's a big reason why they do it and why they do the recording. So I agree with that. It's very important to listen to people with lived experience. There's a lot of thanking in the chat, so thank you for sharing your stories. This is restorative and filled with radical hope for women who are newly diagnosed. It's all about strength and resilience. Someone's takeaway here is Andrea's, women are impacted by HIV and need to be prioritized. And of course, you never know what someone is going through and the barriers one has to overcome. All very true.
Yeah, so now we're going to invite our panelists back. I know they're on there, but if there's any questions, you can either unmute yourself or you could type it in the chat. Again, if you have any questions for our panelists, we have Marilyn, we have Vanessa, and we have Gabby. Feel free to ask. We have a couple minutes for question and answers.
And I also wanted to mention, if you're, comfortable, you can raise your hand and come off of mute as well. Don't be shy. I know some of you have questions.
I do want to
even just comments.
I'm sorry. I just want to really quickly say something, and I think that we also have to think about training already the people that are in the medical field, nurses, administration, front desk people, doctors, providers, because we still very much have a lot of stigma in the medical field. Recently my husband is negative, and we went to his primary care physician. We asked for an HIV test, and the physician questioned why he needed an HIV test if we were married. Again, I don't see why I have to tell her my business, but I was like, we can ask for an HIV test. I don't see why you need a reason for it. And she said she needed it for insurance purposes, which I knew was not true. And then she kind of made a comment and asked my husband if he was sleeping around with men. And so those type of things, my husband, then he's like, I'm never going to go back and get a test again. Like, I will never ask for one. And so I needed to not only talk my husband down to how he felt and actually getting the HIV test, where it's just horrible. We really, really need to go back and see where is the disconnect, where medical providers are still practicing with stigma.
Thank you, Marilyn, for sharing that. There's a question for Sitlali in the questions, and I'll ask. How do you evaluate the success of the podcast? Views, personal testimony, use in training, etc. So Sitlali, if you want to answer that.
Yeah, there's a couple ways that we've been evaluating the podcast. So one definitely is views and reach. So we're getting close to 8,000 listens or downloads of the podcast. And it's been listened to literally across every single continent. So we have listeners in Asia and Europe, Australia, all over Africa and South America. So that's really awesome to see that, you know, here and there's like a new city somewhere in Germany where they're listening to it. So definitely we it's published on Buzzsprout. So Buzzsprout does a lot of that data collection and it gives us reports on listens and locations. We also have been doing qualitative interviews with the participants themselves to get like a, now that you've done the podcast, how do you feel about your diagnosis? How do you feel about stigma, internalized stigma, if there was any for you personally? So we've been gathering qualitative data on if it's changed their relationship to their diagnosis, if it's increased any activity in accessing social support services or even medical services. And we have seen that there has been an uptake in social support, which is really nice. So once they talk about their stories on this podcast, women are more open to joining support groups and joining community, getting more involved in community. And it has shown there is some signs that it is increasing their willingness to go to the doctor's appointments, stay on their medication, and all that is really important too. So it's an ongoing effort. So we still have more qualitative interviews to do, but there's a couple of ways that we're gauging the success of it. So
Leroy, I see you have your hand up. Did you have
Yeah.
a question or a comment?
I do a quick question and comment. You know, we had before this, this has been an amazing panel. Thank you all. We've had a lot of people kind of reach out to the Office of AIDS and just about experts in HIV that are women. And this is, you're obviously all experts in HIV. Like this is a formidable group of women who could, why don't you rule the world? And then we're going to solve like all the problems that we have. But I want to say that the things that would welcome you into I like you to comment the things that would welcome you into organizations to make sure that we like center consumers and client services. That's kind of one question. But the other thing at the end, if you could just say how how can providers kind of reach out and collaborate with you for future events, to monetize some of the things that you're doing to help like support and grow the podcast. So two things, like how do we do better at like centering like consumers so that we actually bring more people's lived experience into the HIV STI work that we do? And then the second thing is how do we reach out and actually continue to collaborate and be allies with your podcast and with the work that you're doing, because it's amazing.
So I'll say, if we can move it to the next slide where our contact, please reach out. We're very much about collaboration. Through this podcast, you know, we've been able to collaborate with Christie's Place in San Diego, with Reach LA here in Los Angeles County. We've worked with a lot of organizations who may not focus specifically on women, but who may have like a small support group or who work with women, and they've heard the podcast and they'll come up to us from another presentation and say, oh my God, we know this woman who would be amazing for your podcast. Please reach out to her. So we've done a lot of collaboration with other organizations. We're always open to that. But also I think, you know, Marilyn really made a good point of, as providers, as administrators, as program developers, as evaluation, whatever our role is really that the real experts are the people who are living with HIV. And so we sometimes need to take a backseat and listen to their full story, not just the HIV component, not just the medical piece, but understand the social, and we always talk about the social determinants of health, but by understanding people's stories from their upbringings, their challenges, their traumas, that's going to help us be better providers, planners, and administrators. And so I think we need to make more space for listening from the clients that we serve, from the communities that we're serving.
Well stated, Natalie. I couldn't agree with you more. That makes all the difference. It's like you have to get to know the whole person and not just focus on that one aspect of that person.
Mhm.
Did anyone else have any comments, questions, or anything they'd like to add?
I just
would
want to
like
say
to,
again, thank you. Oh, sorry. Oh, go ahead. Say, Gabby.
Natalie, you go first. I would like to add, how helpful it is for folks, for our communities to know more about other histories, about or LGBT or cisgender community, how important or what is the impact for the podcast, when they hearing this history comes from the bottom of different hearts, and then like, and how truly helpful it is, like, because I share the video, the podcast, and also with the support groups in Los Angeles area. And also my friends told me, like, Gabby, like, you helped me to change my little thoughts and my mind, and I can see people living with HIV and different. And I say, thanks to Natalie, thanks to Citlali, to Elia, because that girls invited me to be part of their podcast and their project. And that's what I say, I have a little angels and they are here, and, and I feel so happy for it. And English is not the best, but I try, keep moving forward and speak what I know, and then thanks all for being part. Thanks.
And we thank you, Gabby. We were able to understand you perfectly. So thank you. I just wanted to mention one thing that was said in the chat. Marilyn, Kimby wanted to thank you so much for sharing your story about being at the doctor's office with your husband, that it was very impactful to demonstrate how much work still needs to happen around education for providers. So thank you for even adding that part to your story. So Natalie, was there anything else you wanted to say before we go off on our break?
Yeah, no, thank you. For inviting us to present the podcast. As you see, it's a team effort. I thank the team members. I thank our participants of the podcast. And again, please reach out to Marilyn, reach out to Gabby or Vanessa. Again, this is just one door to sharing their voice and their experience. But as Marilyn has expressed, her walking through that door has opened many more doors for her. And so again, if you can be a door for any of these women to create opportunity, to invite them to a roundtable, to invite them to an online support group, I encourage you to continue to offer them those opportunities. Thank you.
Thank you all so much for being a part of this panel, and I appreciate everything you've done and said, and we appreciate your vulnerability and sharing your stories with us. We have a lot to learn from you. So thank you.
Thank you.
And
Thank you.
we're going to go ahead and take a break, and we can come back at 3 p.m. Thank you so much.
Welcome back. Once again, my name is Leroy Blea. I use he, him, and his pronouns, and I'm the Ending the Epidemics Program Manager with the California Department of Public Health Office of AIDS. And it's really just still on a high from that last panel. That was amazing. The Confessions podcast was just an amazing intervention and a program to hear about. And thank you so much to the organizers of that work and all of the women that participate in it. It is my pleasure to introduce this next session entitled Aging with Pride. And we have and I'll describe a little bit about what the session, how the session is going to be designed. First, we have Dr. Angie Perone, who's the director at the Center for the Advanced Study of Aging Services at the School of Social Welfare at UC Berkeley. And she's an assistant professor at the School of Social Welfare. She also previously served as a civil rights attorney with the Robert Wood Johnson Foundation, a health policy fellow in the United States Senate, and is the founding executive director of SAGE Metro Detroit. So Dr. Perone may provide some additional background as she's presenting, but she's going to be presenting her the study that she did, Aging with Pride, and we're also excited to have a distinguished audience of discussants to react and to ask questions. Dr. Perone, you also have a lot of collaborators in the room, folks that have worked directly with you in implementing this research. So I'm also going to be introducing right now Jax Kelly, who's the president of Let's Kick AIDS Survivor Syndrome, Palm Springs. Jax has been a tireless advocate for healthcare for people living with HIV and people of color for more than 30 years. He assumed his first leadership role in HIV advocacy in 1991 and has served as a board member of the Upper Room AIDS Ministry, now Harlem United. He was diagnosed in 2006, and he has served as the president of Let's Kick Ass Palm Springs since 2019. Welcome, Jax. And so we'll have you as a discussant. I'll be discussing what the discussant role is. Welcome, Kevin Sitter, who's my predecessor. And of course, I could never really replace Kevin, but he was the immediate past Ending the Epidemics manager with the California Department of Public Health Office of AIDS, who's worked almost 40 years in the field across the continuum of HIV in both care and prevention. The last 18 years, prior to retirement, he was the Ending the Epidemics program manager and assisted in writing both our Getting to Zero plan and our Ending the Epidemics strategic plan. So Kevin is also an architect of the work that helped us to implement all of things kind of behind the work that we're doing now. So thank you, Kevin. Dr. Phil Peters is a medical officer with the Office of AIDS at the California Department of Public Health. He works on HIV prevention and medical care programs in California, including pre-exposure prophylaxis. So thank you all. So your role as discussant and all of us that are listening to Dr. Perone today are to listen to her, the outcomes of her study and how she's designed it to center the voices of those living with those that are aging in California. And Dr. Perone actually has a set of tools and sort of a wonderful model for making the research that she does practical and accessible. So this is a different model for how we're doing a question and answer. So we're going to turn the floor over to you and ask you to share your slides and to tell us the story of the stories that you were able to hear through your research.
Great, thank you so much. And again, want to thank the folks who are here, who are my collaborators, as well as the folks that are participating from afar. And just underscore, this is not my study. I think really of this as our study. And I think this is really important for all sorts of things moving this area forward in terms of research. So let me just open this up. Can you see my slide?
Yes, they look great.
Okay, wonderful. So just a little bit about the center that I direct. It's the Center for the Advanced Study of Aging Services at UC Berkeley, and we use research, education, and policy to explore broader environmental, cultural, and social drivers that have the greatest impact on aging and aging services. This was our project team who helped gather data and develop relationships and maintain relationships to make this project possible. And we had 18 formal community partners that were critical to the success of this project. And so these are them.
I'm sorry, I'm going to ask you to pause. Can folks see the slides now? Can folks see Dr. Perone's slides? No, so for some, yes. So now your slides are visible. So go ahead. Oh.
Can people see them now, it sounds like?
I'll double check the visual settings, but I can see them on my end, so I'll recheck on mine.
Okay.
So there's some folks that cannot see them.
Should I wait or should I keep going?
So I would say, Dr. Prone, do you mind if we actually share your slides from our end? So I think that
Yeah.
would probably be more visible to everyone.
Yeah, not a problem.
So go ahead.
Okay.
So yes, we'll restart those.
Perfect. Okay. So I just gave a little summary of the center, and then our project team. Thank you. And then our group of community partners. We had 18 formal community partners. Next slide, please. Perfect. And then I also want to recognize the funders. This was a pretty large project, and so we had support from the California Healthcare Foundation. Next slide, please. The SCAN Foundation and MetaFund, and I want to make sure that they get their appreciation as well. Next slide, please.
I'm just going to pause there again. People are still seeing no slides, and someone notes that you have to click on Dr. Prone's video, and then slides will pop up. So
yes,
so some folks are seeing them, and some folks aren't.
That makes sense. Yeah, Zoom has changed the way that we interact with slides, and so yeah, that's a good tip.
So great. So let's just.
Okay. Do you still want to do them, or do you want me to?
No, we're going to continue to go ahead and show them if you don't mind. Yeah.
Sounds good. Okay, so the background for this is we had, but many folks here are probably familiar with the statewide survey. This was the very first survey of health, well-being, and service needs of midlife and folks who are basically 50 and above, who identified as LGBTQIA+ in California. And so that collected data from over 4,000 people. And so the project that I ran was focused on the qualitative data, which were focus groups. So building off this survey, we conducted focus groups from mid to late 2024 with underrepresented LGBTQIA+ older adults who are generally harder to reach and often excluded from research, services, and policy. And so that's what this particular project focused on. Next slide, please. And then not surprisingly, there's lots and lots of information from the survey. So I'll just highlight a few pieces that were relevant for our focus group project. Was that from the survey, we learned that people of color and transgender and gender expansive people reported poorer health outcomes, more financial insecurity, poor social and economic well-being, as well as more barriers to services. Also, higher rates of discrimination, trauma, and discomfort disclosing sexual or transgender and gender expansive identity. And then over 60% of transgender participants, however, reported excellent or very good or good relationships. So this wasn't a representative sample, but it is a helpful bit of data about sort of some of the general, just gathering general information from this particular population in California. And so this shows a little bit of a lot of challenges, a lot of barriers, and then also some community assets that we can leverage too. Next slide, please. So the focus group project had four key aims. One was to elevate voices of hard to reach and often underserved communities. 2, gather in-depth knowledge about challenges, needs, and supports. 3, illuminate creative, surviving, and thriving strategies that can be incorporated into social services and supports. And 4, identify recommendations for policies, funding, programs, and services. Next slide, please. So we ended up conducting 23 focus groups with over 200 participants. Each one was about 2 hours each and had between 4 and 13 people in it, with an average of 9 people per focus group. Eligibility was 50 and above, although we did lower it for some of the focus groups, and you'll see why in a second. We used critical intersectionality as our frame for the project. And so for some groups, so for example, we had several focus groups where we talked to older transgender Latina immigrants, and the age was lower for a variety of reasons, in part because of the intersections there, life expectancy, and people just don't live as long. And so we made it a point to expressly lower the age of eligibility to align, to present a more equitable aging framework. And so we conducted these from June through October of 2024. Focus group participants received a gift card. We did 20 in person, and then we did 3 virtually because we wanted to do some virtual based on what worked best for the community partners and the participants. Most of the focus groups were conducted in English, although 4 were also conducted in Spanish. Next slide, please. And then we had 208 participants from 17 counties in California. About 65% of our participants identified as BIPOC, mostly Black, Indigenous, or Latina. And then 19% identified as transgender. And then 30% identified having received SSI in the past 12 months due to disability. 34% were persons living with HIV. Most are HIV long-term survivors. And then the age ranged between 45 and 90, with the median age of 64. Next slide, please. And then we had a large percentage of folks who identified at or under the federal poverty level. And then nearly 80%, if you look at California's high cost of living, 80% were at or below the California individual median income. Next slide, please. And I included this because a lot of the some of the nonprofit partners we worked with found this conceptual framework helpful, particularly when thinking about program development next steps or even funding proposals. And so we use this, and I have a QR code if you want to, if you need to cite to where this is from or you want to look at it in more detail. But basically, this just shows that systems are complicated, they're intertwining. This builds off, in public health, we talk a lot about social drivers of health, but this also includes political determinants of health, and then also looks and really foregrounds power as a central component in understanding how these systems interact. And so an example from one of the data of how these sort of systems interact is from Ebony. And Ebony says, I live in subsidized housing because that's all I can afford. It constantly leaks and gets moldy, and that affects my asthma. It's hard to breathe sometimes. It was hard to recover at home after my surgery. So you see these intersections of housing and health, economics, and all sorts of things that they're not siloed spaces. So we use that as a framework for this project. Next slide, please. And we focused on 9 core communities, in part because that's what a lot of our community partners, that's where the community partner input kind of drove this project. And so and again, we had an intersectionality frame, and so there was a lot of intersections here, but these were the 9 core communities: older lesbians, HIV long-term survivors, rural communities, folks who were 75 and over, BIPOC communities. We had several focus groups specifically with Black same-gender loving older adults, transgender older adults, transgender Latina immigrants, and Indigenous elders. And so our research questions, next slide. We really asked, what challenges do folks face? What supports help with these challenges? And how can policies, programs, and services better serve underrepresented and hard to reach LGBTQIA+ older Californians? Next slide, please. And now I want to share a video of one of our participants. And so if you could press play, this is about a 4.5-minute video. And I think it's a really good way to hear some of this from the voice of someone besides me.
Many of us growing older with HIV had passed through so many issues. When I say that, is precisely when we're talking about racism, and then we have homophobia and sexism and gender, and if you're straight, gay, all those different things. And many of us, finally, we're here to find one more: ageism. Because they were not expecting us to be here, there was no money allocated for aging services or for growing older services. So what is happening right now in the San Francisco Bay Area is 73% of the people with HIV are over 50 years old. We still don't know, and they don't know who's taking care of us, if the senior services or the HIV services. But a large percentage is part of the LGBTQI community. And if the senior services, that in general it has been a very conservative environment, is not accepting or not welcoming this community, that on top of that, we have the stigma of the HIV positive, many people have come back to the closet. As an advocate, I like to think that I always been trying to do my best for other people in the community. I spoke to the Department of Health. We know that we have a shortage of doctors. So who is checking on all these people that is getting older at home? Most of the people growing older with HIV need some kind of help. No doubt we're having more heart problems than the average person. No doubt we're having more bone problems than the average person. Our age inside is supposed to be from 10 to 15 years older than the average person. Some doctors might feel overwhelmed with some of us that we are here surviving. Many of us have an amount of health issues. I am a cancer survivor of 13 years. I've been 40 years with HIV. I have anxiety, I have PTSD, and I live with chronic pain, etc., etc. So I had a doctor, but I thought everything was going well. Literally out of the blue, and I question what he did. He just told me, I don't think it's worth it for me to keep fighting for a $20 pill. That's the cost of one of the pain medications. You're having too many health issues. So I think it's a good thing that maybe you should start looking for a new doctor. So I just left the place. I think I was more like numb. So I ended up in bed with withdrawals, with my pain getting incredibly high because I didn't have any help. I'm very thankful to the universe, spirits, God, whatever it is, that I'm here. One of the first things that I will ask everyone that is listening, even the basics of just making a phone call once a week to check on you and asking, are you doing okay? Do you need anything? Even that, it will make the people feel less isolated and less lonely, but also it will provide us with information to really know what is happening. I am a very hopeful person, but for others, again, it's a more difficult journey. All what we want, and it's very simple, not a special place at the table, but simply growing older with dignity. And that is a simple thing, you know?
Thank you. So we do have a whole video series, and I'll give you the link at the end so you can see other videos as well.
Many of us
next slide.
older with HIV had.
And so I'll share a couple of slides here with some of the data from individuals who were part of our focus groups, specifically with folks who have HIV or HIV long-term survivors. And so some of the challenges here included invisibility, a lack of understanding among the broader community. And here's a comment from someone. The big difference is that in the normal world, you age. And we know what that's like, and you retire and you go to your family. That track for us was completely and totally interrupted by taking most of our friends away back in the 80s. So we don't have those people around to help with aging. Folks also talked about the strengths: resilience, adaptability, leadership, advocacy, mentorship. So here's something that someone said. It's showing that the world that I'm resilient. I'm still here, I'm thriving, I'm healthy. I have a doctor who supports me 150%, and that makes a huge difference. And so we also asked about suggestions, and people said they really wanted more opportunities for outreach, to connect, for community engagement, especially for folks who might be more isolated, and then culturally responsive services that acknowledge the long-term impact of HIV. Next slide, please. And then here, I have a couple of participant spotlights just to kind of dive into a little bit more of the nuances here. So we have one from Truman. So Truman says this is about employment and economic security. I was going to the University of Chicago and I was being encouraged to go into the graduate program in human development. I got an HIV positive test in 1987 and I progressed to full-blown AIDS. Any plans for the future just disappeared. I got the long-term disability, which ended when I turned 65. And at the time I thought, I'm not going to make it to 35. So I didn't worry about that. I just turned 65 this last July and I just lost half of that income. So that's been a major adjustment. But then in terms of support, Truman mentioned that I feel like I've been so blessed by services of all kinds that I have received in California in particular. I got a housing subsidy from Organization A. We're trying to sort of anonymize a little bit. And I got Meals on Wheels delivered. My basic needs are being met at a subsistence level, but my emotional needs are not. Isolation became a huge defining factor in my life because I stopped working. And I think isolation is probably one of the biggest health complications among gay, LGBTQ or not as we get older. And there's a lot of research about that too. Next slide. So I think for the sake of time, I'm just going to highlight a couple of things. And then these are all publicly accessible. All the slides, all the videos, everything we've created is publicly accessible. So a number of strengths, folks identified a number of strengths in terms of housing, caregiving, healthcare, and social services. And so I think I will probably not go into too much detail because again, this is all publicly accessible, but I'll move on to the next slide, please. And then suggestions, again, folks really wanted some more investment in affordable housing, HIV-specific housing in particular for older adults, more accessibility. Lots of folks talked about the importance of support and buddy systems, older adult-centric HIV care, mental health supports, a lot, and collaboration among different organizations. Next slide, please. And then we asked folks, if you had a magic wand, what would you wish for? And we like this question because it's sort of more of a big vision question. So here folks talked about having respectful and attentive healthcare and feeling like they were often dismissed or gaslighted. And then having robust networks and caregiver alliances that reduce isolation and provide more comprehensive care. In terms of housing, folks wanted dignified housing with equal and accessible healthcare, including geriatric support to support active and healthy living. And then reduction of stigma and discrimination. So eliminating societal divisions, stigma surrounding HIV and disabilities, racial prejudice, and fostering unity, empathy, and fairness across communities. Next slide, please. And then I just want to end with these two quotes. I think they're pretty powerful. So I'll start with Blaze. So Blaze says, the big difference to me is that in the normal world, you age. And we know what that's like, and you retire and you go to whatever's going to happen with your family or old folks' homes or whatever it is. That track for us was completely and totally interrupted by taking most of our friends away back in the 80s. And also, we don't have those people around us to help with aging, just getting older. And then Light talks about some of the strengths here. And so Light says, and these are names that they identify, these are their pseudonyms. Light says, mindset and service. I know that many different organizations and people individually, one-to-one, that I support, I get as much and sometimes even more from that experience of supporting them. I'm really grateful for the love that I give and receive from the experience of service. I remember when the AIDS epidemic hit and I was a clinical counselor at the time, and I was also diagnosed very early. I realized positive reframing and embracing my HIV was an essential part of my and many of the clients' patients that I worked with, towards feeling good about themselves, towards seeing a balance, without denying the challenge, without denying the pain and the anger and the fear that hundreds of people were dying to my left and right. So I think these are really good examples because they talk about both the systems and structures and then also this individual component and resilience too. Next slide, please. So I want to make sure that folks have access to all of this. There are so many more slides. There's a 10-part handout series, a 6-part video series. anything that you want, and PowerPoint slides, if you want to use these for presentations to, funders or, community members or other community partners, they're all accessible and we want people to use them. And so go to our website, casas.berkeley.edu. You can also email us if you have any questions. And please, 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 this is a community project. So this is all of our, this is for everyone. So I feel really honored to be here, and I really appreciate the opportunity to share this information. Again, much gratitude to the community partners that helped make this possible. I think I might have one more slide. Oh, that's it. And then just our website one more time, or the email. So again, thank you so much.
Dr. Perone, thank you so much for that presentation. And we just wanted to let you know, we also granted you an additional 10 minutes for this session. So meaning that, we have until 3, let me see. I'm just gonna take a look real quick, until 3:55. So yeah, we have some time for discussion, and I'll and I appreciate the story of kind of Dr. Perone kind of reaching out to us and connecting for the Syndemic Symposium is that we had members of the CPG also reach out and identify Dr. Perone's research as important and that it needed to have sort of a broader audience. And we're so glad that we were able to connect, because there is a ton of resources that you made available through, and I really encourage people to visit your website and see how many you created sort of these info graphics for a variety of populations, and it makes it very accessible. But I wanted to talk a little bit about how that collaboration happened. And Jax, I'm wondering if you, as a collaborator in this research, also would want to address that, like that you built this on sort of a collaborative base, right? And how did that come about, and how did that enrich the process of what you were able to find?
Yeah, well, first of all, thank you for the invitation to be here. I've certainly enjoyed working with the Office of AIDS and also serving on the CPG over several years. And Let's Kick Ass Palm Springs, which I've been leading for the last 6 years, celebrated its 10th anniversary this year and was recognized by the California Department of Aging, Riverside County Board of Supervisors, City of Palm Springs, and numerous other people. So we're really happy for the support that we've had across the state. And one of the things that I've been working on is trying to get more collaboration between HIV services and aging services. And my work in the aging services side led me to working with Dr. Angie and working with the CDA on the LGBTQIA survey of older adults, which was the first time that that was ever done in the state of California. And I have to say that that was a really important survey, because the data that we get from those sources, and if you haven't gone to her website and looked for data, I strongly encourage you to do it. Another organization I started last year was the Aging and HIV Institute, which is a policy think tank that bridges the gap between aging services and HIV services. And one of the things that we discovered in the past year was that in the state plan that the CDA, the California Department of Aging, was submitting to the federal government for its compliance with the California Older Californians Act. In that plan, they did not mention HIV or LGBTQ. And it was because of the work that Dr. Angie Perone did on the survey, as well as advocacy that had been done back in 2021 to actually pass an HIV and Aging Act in the state of California, that the Aging and HIV Institute could actually do advocacy work, pointing to that law and pointing to this survey as reasons for including people who are aging with HIV and LGBTQ people in this 4-year state plan. So I really see applicability of all the work that Dr. Angie has done, and further advocacy from other organizations across the state, to make the change that we need for people who are aging with HIV.
Thank you so much, Jax, for that comment. Dr. Perone, do you want to talk about how you sort of built this collaboration from the ground up with folks that you collaborated with?
Yeah, I mean, I think community partners are absolutely critical for all the reasons Jax just mentioned. And so I think that there's a coalition that was developed to help, and Jax is a part of this coalition, as well as I'm sure other people here too, to make sure that the survey was developed with community members, with the insights and knowledge and expertise of community members to make it most impactful. So one, it was also developing, and I think the coalition sort of kept growing in terms of, and then there were sort of these other informal partners that were also getting, providing insights as well. And then so that was for the survey. And then the focus group project built on that. And so the coalition helped provide input for the focus group development, and then also additional community members or community organizations that could provide specific information and help us identify targeted community members that we wanted to focus on for the focus groups that maybe weren't part of the coalition, because the coalition was broader than LGBTQ plus organizations. So it really was, I mean, it was sort of this, I think in a lot of the spaces that we work in with LGBTQ plus communities is a lot of it sort of grows. It's word of mouth. It's networks that build on networks that get bigger and bigger and bigger. And that's one of the biggest strengths, I think, of our communities.
Amazing. And one of the things that has been a theme of the kind of on a national level is continuing to kind of focus on data that will help us negotiate this difficult time, and getting that information to the right people in the right way, to actually do something about it and make that data actionable, which I think a lot of the ways that you've been able to take your study and break it into these pieces that are digestible and can be used for everything from policy to developing services. But
Hey, Leroy?
Yes.
I just want to add a coda to my earlier comments,
Sure.
so that the actual result of presenting that information that Dr. Angie had come up with for the survey, and presenting the HIV and Aging Act, resulted in a final draft that was submitted to the federal government that did have the inclusive language of LGBTQ and HIV and aging in it. So that was a big success. And I want to thank a lot of people in the state of California for actually responding to the call for public comment on that. Public comment does make a difference.
Jax, I wanted to highlight also your advocacy, where you took that discovery of the fact that that data and that information and that framing wasn't in that report. You brought it to CPG, you put it out in a broadcast, and people responded, and that's actually really great to hear that it turned around, and actually now that data is included in there and that information is included in there. I guess the question I was beginning to say around, and Dr. Peters, you may want to weigh in on this, and actually all of you may want to weigh in on this, is that Jesus said something in his narrative about who's checking on us, right? And I think around many of the planning council tables, we referenced our Part A planning council tables that create, that allocate services through Y and Y for people living with HIV, and also people aging with HIV that are low income in our jurisdictions. And people are talking about HIV and aging, what type of system that we need to build, like what are the various components of it, medical, mental health, supportive services. And I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about from anybody's perspective about what that system needs to look like, because we don't have, as Jeff said this morning, it's not built now. We're not prepared to providing these services, but what in your mind, from any perspective, needs to be added to this infrastructure so that we can build that services net to provide a thriving environment for people living with HIV that are aging? Yes, Kevin, I see you. Raise your hand.
Leroy, I think it's important for us to remember not to rebuild the wheel or to create something new. My belief is that we have a set of services for people aging, the senior services through the area agencies on aging, the full set of services available through funding for aging. However, they are not culturally competent, nor are they skilled at responding respectfully and in familiarity with LGBTQ plus populations or people living with HIV. So a fusion of Ryan White services and senior services is going to be critical in order that we don't expend more resources or duplicate resources. But we can't send our aged people out into the senior world without this additional training and cultural competence in order that they can receive the services in respectful and effective ways.
Thank you, Kevin. I'm seeing a comment. We need to build up experience for all of us being the people who reach out for the cure to isolation and aging. And I mean, this is another thing that Jesus said, the idea of all of us connecting to each other more. Dr. Peters, is there anything that you want to add from the medical perspective?
Well, I would echo, it was a really fantastic presentation, and also kudos to Jax and his work. You know, it is just really impressive to hear, you know, him bringing that up, that it was not mentioned in the plan, to actually advocating and now getting that inclusive language, which is, you know, so important for planning and making sure that these services are reflected in the funding moving forward. I think, you know, I was really struck with the presentation. There was a slide that was presented that showed the income of people who are participating. And I thought that that was really striking, the, you know, predominance of people with very low income who were participating in the study. And as far as I understand, that was not part of how people were recruited as well, so that is likely very representative of people with HIV who are aging in those 9 core communities that you're recruiting from. So I think that that really speaks to the challenges. I think 2 things maybe 3 things I wanted to mention was, one, that, you know, a real challenge that seems universal and is really highlighted by people with HIV in this survey who are aging, is isolation. And that seems like you know, many things when you think of income, like how can we address income? That would be really difficult to try to raise everyone's income. Addressing isolation seems like a much more, you know, manageable goal that really, for, you know, every single person that is out there on participating in this symposium, I think it's really, for all of the activities that we're doing, it's a very attainable to add that to whatever we have been doing, whatever new programs we're thinking of developing, that contains a component of how are we addressing people's isolation, how are we bringing people together, how are we supporting peer mentors who are really key to making a lot of those connections. I was really heartened to see Hapwa being mentioned, and that is something that that we, you know, work on. And I do think Hapwa, you know, in some situations does get a bit siloed from everything else that we are working on, and seeing it emphasized by people as being such an important resource, and for people who are able to access Hapwa, how that can really positively impact their health. I thought that was really important to see. And for me personally, I just think there's a lot that we can do to try to involve Hapwa in that funding source and what they're planning in our more general activities, whether it's working with aging or it's working with something related to HIV prevention. And then this is not, I think this I also came through in your presentation that really hit me was the report of just a lot of people feeling like they were being gaslit by their providers. And I think Jeff Taylor maybe, kind of alluded to this earlier in the plenary part of the symposium, the first plenary, that I think we do really need to be humble that, we want to continue doing what we are doing, but also recognizing that we are entering a little bit of an uncharted territory right now. And we may have kind of answers for, generally what's good for people who age, and we may have answers for what's good for people with HIV. But that intersection is kind of uncharted, and we do need to really listen to people who are experiencing this, and stay humble because we don't have all of the answers. But I think from listening to this survey, we can really get a lot. We can learn more about those answers from listening to people and what they're trying to tell us. So just a few reflections, but those are really impactful, and thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Peters.
If
Dr.
it's
Perone,
possible,
oh, go ahead.
can I start with some thoughts as well?
Yes, please, Kevin.
Thanks. First of all, Dr. Perone, thank you for not living in an ivy tower, but to be living in a hut in the village, as it takes all of us, and you were there with us. So thank you so much. I think that a couple things that were provoked from your presentation includes the fact that most of us aging with HIV have a touchstone to the 80s, that was our trauma, that was our experience. And for those who weren't there in the 80s, someone's asking about if those becoming trained for caretakers, coming to appreciate that the beginnings is really critical. There are videos, there are books, but for whether people are aging, living with HIV or not living with HIV, we have a touchstone to the trauma of the 80s that remains with us forever. In the women's presentation, one of the women was talking about how she just thought of diagnosis equals death. And I think so many of us still, despite our knowledge, and if we get an HIV infection diagnosis, we still go back to the 80s, that still resonates and echoes. And we need to be able to come forward from that. But in the beginning, that trauma just really arrives back with us. It was when you were talking about the older lesbian section, they were leaders in the caregiving of gay men in the early epidemic. And they now continue to have the trauma of the 80s and the trauma of caring for men who died. And they don't really get as much recognition for that work that they did and contributed to the HIV community. And so I think that we have a way to lift up and celebrate the gift that came from the lesbian community in the early days of HIV. Jesus was talking about doctors supporting him 150%. And yet our doctors are aging, and we need to find new providers. And that means retelling our story a lot of the times. The newer providers are often younger and weren't there in the 80s, as well as our other specialists that we need to go to, our cardiologists and our diabetes doctors and our orthopedics. How many times do we become the trainer versus the patient? And so I think that we have to appreciate the experience of aging with HIV and needing to shift our medical services from people who really were with us and carried with us for such a long time, but they deserve a retirement as well. And it leaves us needing to find new providers who don't have that experience all the time. And lastly, I think it's important that while we want to age with pride, we still need to appreciate dying with HIV. And what are we doing to be able to ensure that we can live a long life, but also have a death that we want? I'm working in Minnesota now, and so one of the things that we looked at was there was an increase in deaths in 2024 relative to other years. And what part of that is just the prevalence of people in the age groups now? But also, we looked at the age group comparison of 20 to 49 and 50 plus. And in either population, only about 1 in 5 died of an HIV/AIDS related illness and death. In the elders, 71% died from other diagnosis or other diseases or other reasons. Only 45% of those aged 20 to 49 died of other reasons. What's critical is that both had overdose deaths that were percentages that are sad. That in the aged population, 50 plus, 8% of people died because of overdoses in 2024 in Minnesota. In the 20 to 49-year-old, it was 36%. 1 out of 3 died of overdose death. And these are the causes of death amongst people living with HIV in Minnesota. I don't know if California can do that. There's so much to be done in epidemiology, but it just brings me back to recognizing that we have a ways to go to look at why are we dying, and are there things that we can do to avoid or to eliminate some of those deaths prematurely. It shouldn't be that, oh, you've got HIV, therefore, of course you've got cancer and you're going to die. It really should be, what are we doing to sustain health and lower morbidity that could be avoided?
Thank you for that comment. Does anybody want to comment on Kevin's comment?
I'll just add, so we had some data, a lot of data actually about the issues. I think that, thank you, Kevin, first of all, for saying all that, but relating to some of the comments that Kevin made, we had, as you saw, 1 in 3 of the folks we spoke to was a person living with HIV, which was not something we didn't target. That was just the nature of interviewing and talking with, or doing focus groups with folks who were underrepresented in some way, shape, or form, and the intersectionality component. And so we talked to transgender folks actually in rural communities, and a number of them were living with HIV. And they talked about this very aspect about social isolation, but dying, being isolated and not having people who could check on them, or like how they were creating networks of support systems, but that the geographic spread made it really difficult sometimes to check on people in person. And so that was a concern of not having the dignity of death that they wanted as they were navigating aging with HIV. So I just want to echo that came out in our data. And I wanted to show one quick slide that I thought was really relevant to the caregiver piece. Okay. So I have this chart called the Rainbow Generations chart, and I'll put in the chat where you can find it if you're interested. But it breaks down, hopefully, it breaks down different groups. So if you're doing any sort of intergenerational work, there's different ways in which LGBTQ communities have been sort of mapped into the mainstream community. So like baby boomers are considered the pride generation, and it's based on these historical cohorts. But the AIDS epidemic, so we sort of characterize the AIDS epidemic as really obviously a pivotal historical moment, as Kevin so astutely pointed out, as the caregiver generation, and how that has really become a defining moment in terms of all sorts of life stage things. And that really came out too in our data as people were talking about COVID and talking about both the trauma of caring and losing friends and families of choice during the AIDS epidemic, but then also what that meant for COVID and sort of reliving that trauma, but then also accessing knowledge of creative caregiving, strategies during COVID that they had used during the AIDS epidemic. So anyways, I just wanted to share this slide and then talk about that and how it came out in our data from the study too.
That slide highlights that we might need to separate out our ages better. I can't remember if we're going 60 plus now and putting everyone in that category. We really should be starting to analyze the decade of the 60s, 70s, and maybe 80 plus at this point. But to put 60 plus all together is not showing some of that reflection of experience in history, and we might find different experiences in the different decades.
That's right.
I have a couple of comments and questions in the chat. I just want to highlight. There was a comment around resources for people that are training as caregivers. If there's some type of educational curriculum or something that people could point to in resources. So I'll see if there's any response to that.
It's a good question. I think there are probably resources here and there, but I'm not aware of like a comprehensive place where that's being housed. I don't know, Jax or Kevin or Phil, are you aware of that? You specifically for caregivers for folks who are aging with HIV? There should be.
Well, in the California Master Plan on Aging, which is administered by the California Department of Aging, they've taken on the task of educating people about the crisis of caregiving and trying to figure out ways. And they've had meetings and discussions on this to talk about everything from training caregivers to supporting higher wages for caregivers, to trying to find alternative ways to make sure that people who do become caregivers just because of their family status, or in the case of being chosen family, can actually not take the financial hit from losing their job and being the primary caregiver for somebody. So it's a topic of a conversation definitely in the aging services side. I think it's why the work that I'm doing with the Aging and HIV Institute kind of comes into play there, because when I see these discussions going on, it's when I start talking about the various intersectionality that I experience that oftentimes doesn't become part of the conversation when people are talking about caregivers.
I think that's totally dead on, Jackson. I think there are some national resources with the National Resource Center on LGBT aging, but we need more robust resources and tools. So, Jax, I think this is a good funding opportunity for your institute. I think, if you're so interested, but the bottom line is we do need more of this. There's not enough out there right now, and certainly not stuff that's evolving with what we need and what we know now.
And I'm just feeling like the cycle comes back around. I put into the chat that maybe we need to rethink the buddy system that was there in the 80s and early 90s, where people with HIV were assigned a volunteer buddy. That might be needed for aging with for LGBT people, one of those connection pieces. I'm also thinking about the old speakers bureaus and how many agencies still have a speakers bureau. We are following California trying to get legislation to provide protections for LGBTQ plus individuals and people living with HIV in both long-term care facilities, transitional care facilities, and in home health services. But we're adding a training component because of recognizing that a lot of our staff in long-term care facilities now are African-born individuals who have immigrated to the United States. We've done a couple trainings in where it was necessary because of some discrimination, and the staff was very receptive. It felt like it's HIV 101, and yet it was so affirming that people were gaining information, and that population of service providers, African-born individuals, take it back into their communities who are also still developing in this new USA area. And so I think that there's some things that we used to do that we might be able to do again. Speakers bureaus, buddy systems. Let's look back to what was working in the beginning and what might be needed now.
I'll just note that there's some really amazing comments in the chat, people kind of just wrapping themselves around many of the comments that you've said as being insightful, helpful, and also sharing your experience about the 80s and the 90s of the traumatic experience that happened within the early 90s for folks that were caregivers. And also there's other questions that we can answer asynchronously, but since we're coming down to time, we have 2 minutes left. I'm going to turn it over to this group to just do kind of a round of just concluding remarks, anything that has been unsaid that you'd want to say as we end this session. And we'll start.
Long-term survivors often have institutionalized poverty. Early in their lives, they were determined disabled. They had AIDS diagnoses, they had hospitalizations, they had near-death experiences. And while their health now is restored and robust in many situations, they can't leave the system of SSDI and the Ryan White services and all that has provided. To leave that system and get into income, into housing, into the social supports and all the other key areas, it can't be done. But that puts a unique position on peer interactions and of how we live our lives as retired people. And so just appreciate that the long-term survivors who were disabled early in life have some institutionalized restrictions in poverty and in resources because of that.
I would just say also to add, that in this period of time, because I know I'm talking to primarily an HIV services audience, that we should, and we're all aware as HIV services people about the tremendous cuts that have been going on in our services. So, but I also want to point out, if you're not aware of it, that this has been happening in the aging side as well. And there's a whole restructuring of aging services that's going on, maybe not getting as much publicity as maybe even HIV has gotten. But certainly, I don't, maybe as a HIV community, we're not paying as much attention to it. But I think all of us in HIV services, if you want to really start collaborating with people on the aging side, this is a really good time because there's a lot of commiserating going on. And in out of that shared experience could come some really powerful collaborations.
Thank you, Jax. Dr. Peters, any last comments?
I thought that was tremendous, really insightful, Kevin, about the income and poverty people are experiencing. And I'm just thinking this is a really, like Jax is saying, that this is a really good moment for us to reach out to our colleagues in aging. And there are a few comments I think we can maybe address offline, because there certainly are some very comprehensive, but maybe also hyper local programs that are done that provide, incredible comprehensive services for people with HIV, over 50 or over 60 or what have you. But I think what is really missing is kind of that outreach from us to our colleagues in aging, to see what can we, how can we work synergistically with them and kind of not reinvent everything that they're doing, but provide them with a module, things that are easily understood for them to kind of incorporate into their training and their programs that highlight all of these issues that have maybe been invisible to a lot of people, but need to be seen and need to be addressed.
Thank you, Dr. Peters. And Dr. Prone, the last word's yours.
Sure, thank you. I just want to add that this study, the survey and the focus group project, we did this because folks, community members wanted this data. And so please use it. And then we're happy to collaborate with organizations, with community members on how this can be most useful. So please reach out. Don't be shy. And that's the point. That's the goal of this. So again, thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you. A round of applause for the presenter and the discussants on this session. Thank you all for the work that you do. And now we have just 2 minutes to end the symposium today. So we're gonna just make a couple of announcements. Actually, the announcements that we will make are that we're gonna be here tomorrow with a session that begins at 9 o'clock. You're gonna use the same Zoom link that you used today. And I'm gonna go ahead and say next slide, please. Or actually, this is it. We want to confer gratitude for all the speakers, the amazing content that they provided, and the way that people demonstrated how, once again, the work and the way that we're moving forward is putting our minds, our hearts, and our bodies sort of into service to this pursuit of addressing the syndemic. And there have been a lot of examples of how we've addressed and are addressing stigma, but we have a long way to go too. So thank you, speakers today, for pushing us forward and helping us conceptualize how we better address stigma as a social determinant of health in addressing HIV, STIs, and hepatitis C. We're going to put a link in the chat that are the links for our sessions tomorrow. We have breakout sessions that focus on supporting the trans and gender workforce. We have a breakout session on rapid art demonstration projects. We have a session on HIV and aging, including outcomes from Project Cornerstone. We're going to be presenting some content of minimum income and things that are meeting the theme and test tomorrow, which is economic justice. So that's the theme that we're highlighting tomorrow. Thank you all for your engagement and participation and the work that you did in asking questions, and we will continue to answer these questions sort of asynchronously throughout the entire symposium. Thank you, thank you, thank you, and we hope to see you tomorrow and then the next day. Bye, everybody.